Hi there, everyone. Art Burns here. I hope you're all having a great day today. So, one of the things that I hear from so many of my clients is something that really resonates with me, right? And because of a lot of the clients that I'm working with, whether they realize it or not, they are experiencing a lot of stress, right? And a lot of times they don't realize it, right? And that's the thing about stress is that, because it's on a chronic level, as I talk about, 77% of American adults have chronic stress, right? Meaning that they get into a state of hyperarousal in their body every day, right? Or most every day, let's say, because maybe on the weekends you don't feel the stress, but Monday morning it starts ratcheting up, and by Friday night you're tight as a spring, right? That's what chronic stress looks like, right? And a lot of times, because it goes on for so long and because it is so constant and so kind of regular and in its own way kind of reliable, right? It's always there. It becomes just kind of part of the background, right? It just becomes like normal. It just feels like it is what it is, right? Like there's nothing wrong with me because this is just my life, right? Like this, I don't feel anything wrong with me, right? And so that's where stress can be a very deceptive thing, and a little bit frighteningly so, right? Because when you don't recognize the stress you're feeling, right? That's when you don't do anything about the stress that you're feeling, right? And over time, right? Again, if you're getting into that state of hyperarousal, your body is designed to experience stress under times of danger, right? Like that's what it's there for, right? It's a physical response of your body, meant to be a physical response to a physical experience in your life, right? Being chased by a wild animal, almost an impending car accident, you know almost falling off of a ladder or something like that, right? In these cases, right, when I don't expect a lot of people watching this video get chased by wild animals, but there's lots of sort of everyday experiences in which stress is very appropriate, right? Like you blow a flat in the middle of the night, on a winter night, and you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere. The stress response is going to drive your body to find the energy it needs to get out of that what could be a very dangerous situation, right? And there's lots of different situations that can be appropriate for stress. However, when stress becomes chronic, that's when it is a physical response to a mental experience, right? And that's what happens on the Monday through Friday thing that I explained, that I illustrated a couple of seconds ago, right? That you wake up Monday morning after a nice relaxing weekend, and you get into the emails, you get into the phone calls, you get into the grind, right? That's why we call it a grind, right? We're grinding ourselves, right? And with that grind comes a buildup of stress because you're worried about what's going to happen if you don't get the emails done, you don't make the phone calls, you don't earn the money, you don't pay the bills, all this kind of stuff, right? And so that's where stress becomes a very, again, sort of insidious thing, right? Because we don't recognize it. We don't recognize it because we feel that it's normal, right? So the thing I hear from so many of my clients, which is something again that resonates with me so loudly, something that I feel like is actually part of when I give a presentation about stress, I always tell people this, and almost every single time I talk to somebody after my presentation, they say, you know what? When you said that thing, I was like, whoa, that's me. I got to talk to this guy. And what I'm talking about here is the perception that there's never enough time, right? That's what it feels like to be very high stress, right? And the reason for that is not the stress itself, right? It's actually what's causing the stress, which makes us feel like we don't have enough time, right? And no matter what it is, right? I mean, I have people who are highly driven, business people, and IT executives, or IT managers who are really high pressure jobs, and I have other people who are moms and dads, and not high pressure jobs, right? I mean, even though being a mom or dad is certainly has its moments of high pressure, but it's a different kind of high pressure. But the one sort of common denominator on almost everyone I talk to is this feeling that we just don't have enough time, right? It's always the feeling. It's a scarcity of time. But when I get to talk to them, right, and I get to ask them some questions, right? About, okay, well, let's map out your day. What is it that you have to get done today? Right? And what time did you wake up this morning? What time are you gonna go to bed today? Okay, so let's do some math, right? And almost every single time, right? These people who feel like there's just absolutely not enough time to do the things they need to do. I mean, I'm overestimating every single line item on their schedule, by adding like a half hour to every single thing, and we're still coming up with hours of the day that are not accounted for, right? Meaning that that's how much free time they really do have. But yet the perception is that I never have enough time. Now, this isn't because everybody's, dumb or something, right? I mean, we're all very smart people. We can see, like, we get, the exercise that I do of just writing down the amount of things that I have to do, like, we all have this sort of idea of what's going on in our lives, right? So why is it that we're all so fooled by the fact that by the feeling that we don't have enough time? Well, I'm going to tell you why, right? Again, it's not the stress itself, although the stress doesn't help, right? The stress, when we're in the stress response, again, it's the body's mechanism for dealing with something that the body perceives, or the brain really perceives as dangerous, right? As a threat to our well-being, right? Now, whether that's a physical threat, like getting stuck in the middle of a snowstorm in your car where you could freeze to death if you don't get out of here, and you don't have cell service, like, you got to get out, you got to start hitchhiking, you got to walk, you got to get your blood moving, that's the stress that's supposed to happen. But whether it's driven by something like that, which is an appropriate level of stress, or it's driven by the thoughts and the worries that we have about our mortgages and our cars and our all the stuff that happens in our lives, right? Wherever it comes from, your body, when it's in the stress response, is in survival mode. And so therefore, yes, it is going to have this sense of immediacy and urgency, and that everything has to get done very, very quickly, right? That's going to be a natural essence of your mind in the stress response, or your perception in the stress response, right? But where the feeling of lack of time really comes from, because again, it's not like everybody I talk to is not smart, right? They're all very, very smart. And so, and you are too, right? It's not that we are just, just ignorant about what time really is, and how much time is elapsing and stuff like that. We all have a great understanding of it, right? So it's not that we're wrong that we don't have all this time. The thing is that we spend our time in a way that does not help us. It does not produce things for us. It does not, it's a way in which we spend our time that is counterproductive, right? And what I mean by that is that we spend our time with the thoughts and the worries and the concerns about what's gonna happen if I don't get this job done. What's gonna happen if this person doesn't call me back? What's gonna happen if I'm late for work? What's gonna happen if I'm late for picking my kids up because I'm stuck in traffic, right? Or thinking about the past and how did I get to this place? Why didn't I make this other decision? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I finish school? Why didn't I do stuff like that, right? Like when we're wrapped up in these thoughts of the future or the past, it takes time. We don't recognize that it takes time because we're still, doing stuff, right? Like we're driving our car and we're thinking about this, or washing our dishes and we're thinking about this, or we're sending an email, and in the back of our mind this is going on, right? So it doesn't feel as though it is taking extra time out of our physical day. But the mental activity that it takes, right, means that that's time that we are not devoting to, to sending an email faster, to washing the dishes more efficiently, to driving. But we could be, obviously we're not going to change the amount of distance in between where we are and where we have to get to, through our thoughts. But what we could be doing is we could be thinking about something more creative for ourselves. We could be thinking about something that's more beneficial to ourselves, right? But instead, we're wrapped up in these thoughts about, what I call the if-onlys and the what-ifs. right? Like, if only I hadn't done this, if only I had done that, if only this person had said yes instead of no, or if only that account hadn't created this drama that put me behind schedule. If only, if only, if only, if only, right? Or what if, right? That's the future base, right? Like, what if I don't do that? What if I can't reach this goal? What if I fail? What if I come up short? What if I'm not really as good as I think I am? Right? And the problem with those kind of thoughts, right, whether they're based in the future or they're based in the past, they're going to keep coming back around over and over and over again. And as they do that, right, it blocks out everything else that we have that's available to us to think positively. Okay, so what if this does happen? What can I do to compensate for that, right? That question doesn't get asked because we're so wrapped up in that stress of the fear of what's going to happen if this thing goes wrong, right? Because again, when we get into the stress response, right? When we get into the stress response, our physical brain literally shuts down, right? The thinking part of our brain is diminished up to 50%, right? They've done tests with people under high stress situations, and they've measured like a 50% drop in what would be considered IQ, right? Like literally, like that's I read a study about that a couple of years ago. It blew my mind, right? That we lose basically 50% of our intelligence, right? And that includes emotional intelligence too, because what's happening then, right? When we're wrapped up in this fear, right? You got to remember that fear is an emotion, right? So when we're wrapped up in the fear of what might happen, or fear based on like, how did I get to this point? How did I make these poor decisions that got me to this point? What we're doing then is we're basically at the mercy of our emotional brain. Right? And so we're not coming up with constructive, solutions to things. We're just freaking out about stuff. Right? And again, because it's going over and over and over and over and over, this is taking up an enormous amount of time. And not only is it taking up time, right, but it's exhausting us. Right? Because by the time you get to where you're going, if you're driving, you're just going over this thing over and over and over and over again. When you get to that place, right, you're not your dynamic, creative, amazing self at that point, right? You're this stress monster, right? And again, we don't notice it because it happens chronically and it becomes something that we just come to accept, right? Like back when you were 25 years old and just starting out in your career, right? You didn't feel this way, but we don't remember that, right? Because by the time you were 26, you had, this much stress. By 30, you had this much stress. By 35, this much. By 40, this much. By 50, this much, right? And that's how it works. But it's a slow process. It's like a plant growing, right? You don't see it growing, but then you look at it and you see, oh my gosh, look at how big this plant is going, right? And that is the key here, right? By calling awareness to this activity of the stress of our bodies, by calling awareness to how much the stress has increased, to calling awareness to how we feel the stress on a moment by moment basis. Now we can see it, and now we can work with it, right? And now we can stop that thought pattern once we can see the root of it, right? Once we understand that okay, this is what's causing this stress, and this is why I feel like I don't have time to do anything. Well, now, like I said the other day, we can just let go of those thoughts, right? Knowing that we've done everything we could do, and there's nothing that we can, no amount of worrying about this is going to change the outcome of this, right? That's a very important concept that a lot of people have a hard time accepting, right? That there's no amount of worrying that is going to change the outcome of any situation, right? In fact, it's the complete opposite, right? That the more we worry, the less ability we have to change the outcome, because the less control we're in over whatever it is that's going on, right? We don't have the level of control to make decisions to affect a positive outcome, right? Instead, we're just along for the ride. And being along for the ride, who knows where we're going to get to, right? It's like the old story. There's a old story that one of my mindfulness teachers told me a long time ago. A man is walking down the road and he sees another man passing by on a horse, and he looks up to the guy and he says, "Oh, where are you heading?" And he says, "I don't know, ask the horse." Right? Because that's how it is, right? We're just along for the ride. And so the more that we can see that, right, and bring awareness to all of this that I'm talking about, now we can say, okay, no, I'm going to steer my horse. I have the power to control my actions. I have the power to make choices and decisions that benefit a positive outcome, right? As opposed to just, and seeing what happens, right? And so this is all about, as you know, here in this podcast and on these videos, I talk a lot about implicit biases and and subconscious patterns or unconscious patterns, I should say, and even patterns that are kind of gifted to us through generational people in our ancestry, right? Our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, right? It all kind of passes down. That creates all this implicit and unconscious kind of awareness, right? Or lack of awareness, right? And once we can bring the unconscious into the conscious, the implicit into the explicit, once we can see these things happening, boom, all of a sudden, and it's immediate, folks. I'm telling you, it's immediate. And I have client after client after client after client who has shown me this, right? Not only myself, but all of these clients have shown me that just after a couple of weeks of just bringing awareness and bringing this from the unconscious into the conscious, and knowing that, okay, yeah, look what I'm doing. I'm freaking out about this thing that I really can't control. So let me instead, to let go of these thoughts, let me just sense into my body and just ask myself. I put this out the other day to somebody. I said anytime that you feel that, and again, you have to recognize it first, right? When you can recognize the stress response, right? Now you can ask yourself a couple of important questions. That can be the difference between stopping the stress right now or having the stress just hijack your day, right? And the questions are, when you feel that stress, the questions you can ask are, is there something I should be accepting about this situation right now? Or is there something I should be letting go in this situation right now, right? So should I be accepting the fact that there's nothing I can do, that this client made a last minute change and now it's thrown I have to stay late at work and it's all, it is what it is. Like, do I need to accept that right now? And understand that there's nothing I can do. I cannot go back in time. I cannot, like Superman, fly around the earth the wrong way so that it turns the earth backwards and sets time backwards, right? I can't do that, right? So do I need to just accept the reality of the situation and make the best of it, right? Not that it's always going to be okay. Not that it's going to be enjoyable. Not that it's going to be, acceptable, right, on the long run. But if I accept it for what it is right now, I can keep my body calm. And now I can make decisions that will affect a positive outcome. I will take a bad situation, make it a little bit better, rather than taking a bad situation and maybe making it a lot worse for myself, right? So I ask that question. Or is there something I can be letting go of? Right? Is there some, preconceived notion that I have that's based on my unconscious, kind of perception, right? Something that my parents taught me, something that my grandparents taught my parents, something I learned from a second grade teacher or a fifth grade basketball coach, right? Is there something here that I'm acting automatically that I need to let go? That I need to just be like, okay, that's not necessarily right. Can I challenge this, right? And once we ask those questions, 9 times out of 10, when you're feeling this stress, the answer to one of those questions is going to be yes. But even just asking the question, right? What you've done is you've interrupted this cycle, and you've brought yourself to the conscious. And in just bringing yourself to the conscious, now your brain and the whole mechanism the brain and the nervous system mechanism that causes the stress in your body, now all of a sudden it realizes, wow, We don't really need to be afraid right now, right? We're not stuck in a blizzard in the middle of the night with no cell phone service. We're not, we're not being chased by a wild animal, right? We're not losing our home. We're not losing our job. This is just a situation that we have to get through. And if I can keep calm and I can use all the resources that I have at my disposal, I can get through this, just like I've gotten through plenty of other things that are probably even worse than this, right? Or more challenging than this, right? And so just asking those questions brings you to a conscious awareness of what's going on, and bringing yourself to that conscious awareness of what's going on allows you to disrupt that mechanism that's causing that stress. And then right now what we can do is we can work with it, right? We can realize that, okay, my body's in this stress mode right now. What do I need to do to bring it down? Okay, and now the options are many, right? Once we see it and once we can kind of step back from it a little bit, now the options are very many. Like, I could give you tons of tricks to bring your nervous system down, to switch from what we call the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, go from arousal to baseline, right? From fight or flight to rest and digest. There's tons of practices you can do with that. And it's as simple, one of the most simple ones is just to notice your breath, right? Just feel your body breathing, right? Because the thing is that if you're being chased by a bear, right, you're not going to sit there and feel your breath, right? And so when you're feeling your breath, your brain sees what you're doing and says, hold on a second, we've been freaking out about nothing. So let's turn off the cortisol, let's turn off the adrenaline. Let's let our body just keep doing what it's doing now because it feels good. 2 minutes later, you're going to be in a completely different state. And now you can accurately assess what's going on. You can accurately assess how much time you really do have to complete this task. You can accurately assess the situation that you have. And now you can move forward in a way that serves you, right? And as I always say, at that point, right, now you are showing up. Now you're showing up for the moment. You're meeting the moment with everything that is positive and constructive and creative about you, rather than everything that is destructive, conservative as opposed to creative, and just hyper aroused. So, just to recap. Okay, I know I covered a lot here. I get talking about this stuff and it's like really passionate for me. But to recap, the bottom line here is that by bringing awareness to the stress that we're feeling, right? Number one, we get a better a more accurate sense of how much time we really do have, right? We don't waste the time that we do have. We're more efficient and we're more effective, right? Just by bringing awareness to it. But you gotta have that awareness, right? And so to build that awareness ahead of time, right, is the key, right? It's because again, stress becomes so chronic and so automatic that it's really hard to notice it when it's happening, because it's, again, it's like noticing a plant growing. It's something that's just happening every day, slowly, slowly, slowly. So the key is then to do practices to develop awareness of our bodies. And if you would like to learn some of those practices, please get in touch with me, because it's so easy, so simple for me to teach you those practices, right? And with a little bit of dedication, 5 minutes a day, maybe even less, you can develop the awareness that will have you on the road to not only increasing the amount of time that you have just magically, but also you're going to get into a situation where you're not feeling that constant sense of dread and worry and all the physical ailments that are a result of this, which are quite scary in of themselves. And I didn't even get into that today, but this chronic stress is killing us, literally killing us. And so if we can do something about it, we literally can add time onto our lives, right? Literally. And I can tell you about that too if you call me up. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow. I really appreciate you being here and listening to me and watching these videos. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.